Right now, I just need you to get real loose. Get comfortable. Grab your loved ones, or grab your love partner. And if you're by yourself, no worries. Just follow after me. Gonna do the two-step, then cowboy boogie. Grab a sweetheart and spin out with 'em. Do the hold down and get into it. Take it to the left now and dip with it. Gonna throw down, take a sip with it. Now lean back, put your hips in it. Let's have some fun. To the left now. To the right. Now take your left hand and put it on your side. Gon' roll your shoulders. Do the slip and slide. This next part's my favorite part, cause it's time to shine.
Alright guys, we're down here at Bent Motorsports in San Marcos, California. I got my entire lift spread out onto this table for the Dynatrack 2-inch Enduro Sport. I ended up going with the TerraFlex Alpine control arms, and this kit actually comes with Fox tuned shocks, the springs, rear end links, and then everything else that you need to be able to put this thing up or put the kit onto the vehicle. The one variable in it that I added to outside of the control arms is the front track bar. It's an adjustable one from Steer Smart's, the Yeti. And then I ended up going with a Synergy rear track bar that's adjustable, just because at this point, after waiting several months, Steer Smart still doesn't have a rear adjustable track bar, and this was basically the next best thing. So I have these guys over here at Bent Motorsports. They're gonna install this thing while I videotape what they're doing, and they're gonna explain more in depth as to the specs, the why, and the benefits of some of this stuff that we're putting on in this kit. So let me introduce Dave real quick. Hey Dave, how's it going?
What's up, Josh? Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to show the viewers an install like this so they can be able to do it at home, even though, yeah, you do make money off of this, right?
That's okay. There's plenty of Jeeps out there, and the more guys at least know about what we're doing, it helps them when they come here, because some guys are going to want to do it themselves, and I'm happy to help them with their projects, and then the guys who just maybe want to know about it and will still bring it to me. Doing stuff like this really just helps everybody understand the whole process.
Right, because I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we were just talking about it out in the parking lot. You go to a dealership and they can buy a vehicle that's lifted, and these lift kits are put on and they're not complete. And if people, I think, are assuming that they're getting, oh, this is from the dealership, it's gonna be, this is what I need.
Right, and normally it could be at some dealerships, but a lot of times, like you were saying, there's no adjustable track bars.
Right.
So the axles are offset a little bit.
Right.
You get a little funny tire wear. You start battling those problems. So
right.
Remember, those guys are selling cars.
Absolutely.
Lots of cars.
And they're marking them up like you would believe too. And so then you're buying a lift that's kind of not what you thought it was going to be. You're going to have to put more money in it, and you already paid them an extra 10 grand for them to put it in. And you could have saved all that money by coming to somebody like you, having it done. Here's the price of the parts. Here's the labor. You know it's done right, and because this is what you guys do. You're not there in the business of selling vehicles or making them look awesome, just to get them on the road. So an important part of it, right, is that another thing that they don't do is adjustable control arms. So they're lifting this vehicle, even the Mopar Jeep lift, lifting the vehicle, nothing's adjustable, and everything's just kind of tucked in, right?
Right, so a lot of times we like the adjustability on these because we start getting funny pinion angles, and we want to be able to adjust that out. We also want to adjust for caster, so that also helps us adjust that out. A lot of the kits that have fixed arms, they've done all the math, and it makes it easy for a guy to just install and walk away from it.
Right.
And that's the hope, that the manufacturer who designed this really did the math. And some do, some don't. So I won't name any kits, but some do, some don't. So I like adjustability on everything so that I can put it where I want it. Right? Not where somebody else decided they wanted it.
Right.
But I have the ability to do alignments, and I know about suspension geometry, so for me it's not a scary thing.
Right.
So hopefully with this video we can make it so that you don't think it's a scary thing.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Let's do it.
All right.
So we're just going to take an arbitrary measurement just for before after. So we'll just use the rock slider here because it's a nice 21 inches to the top of it, and that's at the front of the Jeep. And we're, I don't know, 21 3/4 in the back. The last time you rotated your tires?
They just got put on.
Oh yeah, these are brand new.
Brand new. Yep.
Then never.
Yeah, never. So what's the first thing we're doing here? Outside of taking off the tires?
So I'm gonna start, I mean, everything's kind of just got to come off, but I'll probably end up just at least get all the shocks loose. That way they're ready to come off at some point. It would be smart to get this thing hanging, not on its own weight, but on some stands. And then that way we can start taking these springs off, and that way we don't have any sprung weight anywhere.
The benefit of having these adjustable upper and lower control arms is that as you change lift and tire size and all these things change, you know, your pinion angle is going to change, your alignment's going to change, and now we're able to, you know, perfectly set that in. That way, you know, it's not set to the factory spec where we've definitely taken it out of.
And what measurements are you using?
So if you go and use onto the instructions for these, they give you a starting point. So these are the lower front control arms, and they want these at 24 1/8 inches long.
Based off of a 2-inch lift?
Based off a 2-inch lift. So they have on there 2.5 inch, 3.5 inch, and 4.5 inch. We're just running off the 2.5 inch numbers, and pretty much these are all just starting points. Once you start, you set these up, install them, then you're still going to have it aligned. You know, you're still going to do your measurements to make your micro adjustments from there. And all these measurements are just hole to hole, center to center. But this is a 5/16 Allen.
Awesome. We're tightening them up so that they don't move while they're being installed, and that way just making them snug.
We're compressing that aluminum clamp right now, so you kind of got to go back and forth just to seat it evenly.
Right.
No need to get it too tight because we're going to adjust it anyways.
Right now the guys are supporting the front axle so it'll slightly droop, not supporting all of its weight. That's what these stands are for. And the only reason we have it this high is just for videoing purposes. You can do this off of floor jacks and get most of all this stuff done the same way off of jack stands. Hey, Dave, what do you call these guys? The two Jakes?
Jakes.
The two Jakes?
The two Jakes.
The two Jakes. Jake number 1 and wait, who's number 1 and who's number 2?
That's been an ongoing debate.
Oh, who's been here longer?
Oh.
Well, that's a question because he
That's
worked
weird.
part-time for a while, and he did come into the business like a year before I did.
So like part-time, what's that count for, like a half a year?
See, that's where it gets a little funky.
This is what it's a debate.
Who shook David's hand first?
Who enjoyed it more?
Who?
What were we shaking hands for?
Just say hi. I don't know.
Just say hi?
Just being a good guy, you know.
Oh, okay. So did I start working for him when I shook his hand out in
Absolutely.
2 years ago? Apparently, I mean, is that what we're gauging?
Yeah.
this on?
So you're actually.
Is that how
could
you
be
get
Jake
hired?
3.
Sorry, it's the rules.
You have to legally change your name to work here.
That's a weird. That's a weird rule, but all right. I mean,
Hey, guys.
it's not a bad name.
Some people get jumped into a gang. Some people legally change their name. I mean,
So one thing to note when you're doing stuff like this is the sway bar is always going to try and fight you. So if you're working on this side and you're trying to get the shock off to get the spring out, now all that good stuff, it's just better to just take the sway bar off first and foremost, and that way you're not fighting anything side to side.
Right.
So just a little helpful tip for doing stuff like this. Use the longest hardware known to mankind.
Man, I bet it's all aluminum. Thanks,
Yeah.
thanks Jeep.
taking off the end links.
Yeah, we're gonna end up using, we're gonna use the, like you said, the rears are going on the fronts, and then we have some new ones for the rear, so these are just gonna come off completely.
So most of the weight's being supported by these stands, right? Once you take off these shocks.
Yeah, then all of it is. Otherwise, it just fall to max.
Boom.
Stretch all your brake lines.
Just hang and dangle.
Rip them right off.
Hang and dangle. What are we doing right here?
So there's a bolt behind this, but there's like a little heat shield, or else your catalytic converter up here would just melt this bushing. So I just got to take this little heat shield off, and then we'll be able to
get that upper front control arm off.
And then these have like a capture nut, I guess you can call it. So this guy right here is actually welded, or somehow welded to the nut inside of there. So I don't have to get any sort of wrench in here. I just get to undo this, and that's it.
Right.
So
right.
they're pretty useful. So there's just two 10mm little M6 bolts that hold this thing on, and that should be it. That's a goner. So that's it.
Ta-da! Now you have access to your the back side of your front control arm on the passenger side of the vehicle. Unmounting the brake lines.
Yeah. Your ABS and brake line attached to the lower control arm.
I mean, you asked. If I don't respond, that's stealing.
Right? I can't find the logic.
Yeah, you put it there. Look at this fun game. You unscrew this side. There you go down. And now you put this one in.
Tell your wife she makes a good cookie, man.
Oh yeah, she does bake very well. She actually stress bakes. When she's like stressed out, she's like, I gotta bake, and I'm like, oh my god. So I'm like, I'm more like, hey, calm down. I don't need to get real fat. Like, stop.
We're like, what's going on? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Stop! You're stressing me out. I know. You should cook something. You should for sure cook something.
Since he said that, I'm pretty hungry. Slow and steady.
Don't smash your fingers.
The next step for us is going to be to, since we don't want to lower the Jeep to try to get that bolt out, we'll let set that hang. We'll start working on the uppers, the upper arms. We'll get those swapped out with the Terraflex ones. And then we'll do the lowers. Then we'll put in the new bump stop extensions and the springs. There's a little lock that you have to pull this little tab out. That little white tab has to come out, then you can get it off of there.
They use these on like everything on this Jeep. These little little locking tabs.
For both at the same time.
There we go.
There it is. There's your arm.
Smash your hand.
So right here is our stock track bar coming off the Rubicon, and we're replacing it with this Yeti Steer Smart brand front track bar that's adjustable. I mean, you can see the size of them is far different, as well as the weight. The Yeti is at least twice as heavy, at least. All right, in the middle are the Dynatrac springs, and then on the outer edges are the stock Rubicon springs. The Dynatrac springs are not only completely even with each other, unlike the Rubicon, the Dynatrac springs are actually a little bit thicker as well. So, really nice. As you see, perfectly even. Whereas then they're all lined up at the top, and then if you look at the bottom, they're not even springs. Side-by-side comparison of the Terraflex control arm compared to the stock Rubicon control arm in the front upper. Fully adjustable and carries a lot more beef to it. Install the driver's side upper control arm.
Almost hit, or which way?
towards Jake. He was thinking it. So when you're putting on a lift where you're putting on arms that have these rubber bushings in them on both sides, if you're at full droop like we are now, or actually beyond the droop, and you tighten these up, they tighten up on those rubber bushings, and then when we put it on the ground, it tries to compress, and it'll actually bind up. So you're actually putting it into a bind. So then you'll see Jeeps, they'll understand why they've got a lean one side or the other, or corners higher than the other. So we leave all of them loose, and then when it's on the ground, in the static position where it would be going down the road, that's where we tighten them up. Because that's where you want those bushings to be in their neutral state, or whatever you want to call it.
Good tip.
Can you rock this thing?
That's
They're kind of hard to get eye to eye anyways.
Alright. Next.
okay. Now we can
The
take
upper control arms are on. Just getting them so they're not gonna fall off when we compress the axle. The guys are loosening up the front driver's side lower control arm.
Ooh, bam. Snap on.
I'm gonna replace
That
the
one?
front lower control arm on the driver's side. Looks a little long.
boom! Pro tip, stay out of the way of swinging parts.
Yeah, for sure, a little long. Can you try to rotate that? Yeah, the better.
Side-by-side comparison of the stock Rubicon JL lower control arm in the front and the TerraFlex Alpine control arm. You can see a massive shape difference. One of them's rectangular and then the other one's round.
This is a robot weld right here, right?
Right.
And then it missed it on the other side, so they had to go back and repair them all. At least that's my understanding. Jeep might say otherwise, but it's pretty obvious when you see this robot weld, and then you look at the other side. That looks like something got repaired,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's not smooth. Not at all.
So,
And it's almost, I mean, it's, yeah, you're... There's a lip on there.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys want to do some welding? No, it's-
static, right?
Yeah, so we have all the arms on right now. They're all adjusted to where TerraFlex says they want them. And then basically once we get this thing on the ground, we can fine tune it with the alignment. And then at that time is when we'll tighten down all the bushings and we should be good to go.
Sweet. Adding anti-seize.
Yeah, you can never have enough, especially with stuff like this where it sees a lot of weather.
Yep.
Water gets into the threads and it'll kind of rust. It's always good. I mean, if you wanted to be real crazy, you'd do this on everything. But that should be good. So now when we tighten that down, it should spread it out.
Removing the rear end link. And then these rear end links are gonna go up to the front and be the front end links. And then the Dynatrack kit comes with the replacement rear end links. Replacing the front springs with the bump stops inserted as they're rotated on.
We're gonna have to lower it though,
Yeah.
for sure.
Coils actually index into the coil bucket, so if you rotate it around to the back, there's where the end or the coil ends, there's actually a stop on there that kind of centers it.
Bingo.
So a flag nut goes underneath all the brake line.
Yeah, right in between the shock mount. It's a little tough to get started sometimes, especially when you don't have the right tool.
They are a little bit tricky to get started, but the brake line extension, or I guess this has ABS too. So this guy goes on there, and this guy will just go bam right on there, just like that. The other hardware for it.
Same extension on the driver's side. And to allow this whole line to droop down.
Tighten it?
And then this bracket's going to be drilled out and then mounted to the inside of the bolt of the shock.
Because everybody in the office was like exposed to an
Shock
accelerator.
now. We'll replace those next.
So is he making like hell?
Replacing the stock front shock with the
Just move the
tuned
brackets.
Fox shocks to go with the Dynatrac lift.
I slid these brackets down.
Listen, Dad. You know, like you're on coilovers on your car. This is better stock design.
And then that'll allow it to go right there when the shock comes down.
Bingo. Thanks, Way of Life.
Yeah, good fix.
And then we're trying to just match it up for now with center point to center point with these two, so it's the same. And then when we get it on the ground, we'll set everything up and align it properly and get it to be even side to side. Yeah, you did it! First try.
Yeah. Adding on the adjustable track bar from Steer Smarts.
Yeah, they were a mile off.
Alright, the front end's mostly done. Now we're taking off the rear shocks. Allow the rear axle to fully droop.
Oh look, it came out.
Dave's finishing up putting in the end links from the rear into the front.
Down.
Taking off the rear track bar.
So on the front, all we've got left to do is, when it gets on the ground, tighten up all the control arms and get the front track bar mounted on this side. Everything else is done. And then align it.
Next thing the guys are doing is removing the rear upper control arms. An important note for installing these control arms is the clamps that are being tightened for the adjustable control arms. The clamp goes towards the frame on the front, and on the back the clamp goes towards the axle.
So this is attached to the nut on the back side, so you have to kind of line this up all at the same time as you're trying to screw this in. I wouldn't put this all the way in and try and twist it. I'd kind of have it favored out, kind of like this. And the other thing too is note how much room is here, because that'll kind of help you with how high you have to be to get this thing to start threading. It took me a few minutes to finally get it to go, but it's just one of those things that just takes a little bit of time. But no, not too bad, but it's just kind of a pain in the ass.
All right. So all these Alpine control arms kind of indicate where they go. They orientate the stickers so that they're readable and facing outward. Kind of a hint as far as your orientation of which is which. Working on detaching the rear brake lines to reattach them with a relocating bracket, because they are not going to stretch far enough for this 2-inch lift without being disconnected and brought underneath this bar.
So we got 1, 2, 3 8mm little screws. So up here, obviously you can't really get to the upper shock mount. It's just kind of a pain. So this is all you need to take off to get to that, and that's it.
Oh, you're already on.
So these get rerouted.
Tons of them.
So read the directions and see if they gotta go under it. So you've gotta like do something like this and get it to pull back.
Okay.
Right? Then this guy will end up going here.
So we have a synergy relocation bracket for the rear brake line.
Come up here like that. And they've got little rubber bushings
I see.
that go in there. So
I'm glad I picked those up.
good purchase.
So you ever seen 5 dudes work under a Jeep all in the same spot at once? Didn't think so.
Well, it's really 4. I'm just standing here useless.
Okay, so it's
We're just being honest about it.
one Jeep and one camera.
Yeah. One Jeep. Yeah, we're gonna have Dirty Mike and the boys.
It's called a soup kitchen. Once we get the new springs in, we'll deal with these and determine we can undo one of these up here, and that'll give us like an extra 4 inches on the vent tube. And then this guy might still work out just fine. So it just might be that these two get undone. It just gets zip tied here instead.
So it'll be clean, out of the way.
Yeah.
Nothing stretched out. Got the rear lower track bar in place, and then what's going to happen is for this clamp, you're going to tighten up the top Allen bolt, and then release the bolt mounting it to the axle, and then tighten up the other Allen bolt. So that's the process, because on the other side it's blocked and you can't access it with a tool while it's actually connected to the axle. After the relocation bracket's installed, reconnect the rear brake to the bracket on the axle and then onto the brake. Once those rear shocks are removed and that brake line's relocated, these rear springs just basically will fall out. And then upon reinstalling the rear springs, make sure you index.
Yeah, so there's a little knobby there. And then at the same time, you also have this. So you're gonna wanna line up that there. And then
On up.
that guy.
A little more.
And then there's basically a little hole for that tab on the,
That's good.
Yep.
The ABS on the other side is next.
probably back there. So you guys were having some fitment issues with the rear shock going into the axle side?
Yeah, so it was like when you had it bolted on up there, this was just slightly off center like that.
Right.
So it was just being a little bit tough to get to line up in here, and then on top of that, the little metal misalignments that are inside of here weren't, they're 2 pieces, so they weren't squeezed in all the way, so they were having trouble going in here in the first place. So
the tip is mount the bottom.
Yeah, at least for what we're doing right now, we're doing the bottoms first. Sometimes it's fine.
That's great. Hurt it.
Yeah,
Good.
that was it.
It made me nervous. I was like, did I just snap that thing? Did it just break? Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, all we had to do is I just leaving those 2 off with those studs up there.
Yeah.
So this,
For the rear bump stop.
yeah, you can see what Jake's putting on right now. But there's not enough threads showing to get a full nut, so we happen to have these shallow locking nuts that we'll use instead. just make it a little
I think
better.
so.
Yeah.
Luckily, these
lot more
blocks,
grip.
Yeah, and luckily these blocks are just there for that bump to hit.
Right. It's
So-
not gonna be load bearing or anything.
Not an issue.
So that's that. So basically, this is compensating for the, I guess, a lot, or the more space you have now because of the lift. So if you weren't to put these on, you'd end up having probably some contact with tires to your inner fenders, or something along those lines, where maybe some components down here are going to go farther than they're supposed to. So it's always good. Some people are like, well, I'm not going to use that because it's going to give me more travel. Completely, probably wrong.
Right, yeah, you don't want it to, you basically don't want it to compress too much.
Exactly. You're gonna run in. I mean, if you were to,
crazy like me,
unless
and
you're
just
crazy,
really love cramming that tire right up in there.
Unless you go through, like if we went through right now and took these out and cycled this thing 20 times and went, yep, we're good to go, no issues, then yeah, don't use that. But for the most part, they have it there for a reason.
All right, we'll put yours in.
Next thing that we're doing is going to be installing the rear adjustable track bar by Synergy. Bunch of factory hollow parts.
So after this has been torqued, we use cross check. And all it's going to do is it's going to put a little piece of this paint, which is kind of like a ceramic type of epoxy, right here between the nut and the bolt.
So that it can't twist out and like.
Well, it can, right?
well,
But
yeah,
what's going to happen is this is going to dry hard, and then if this bolt loosens up, that little piece of cross check is going to go popped off and fly off, right? And it'll be missing. So when he's done off-roading and wants to do his post-trip inspection, all he's got to do is look under here, see that the cross check is there, and know that it's still torqued.
Okay.
If you didn't have cross check, then you'd have to go through every time and retorque everything because you don't know.
Okay.
Right? So this is just going to basically be a quick way for him to be able to say, yep, it's still good, hasn't moved.
Take it to the left now and dip with it. Don't throw down, take a sip with it and lean back, put your hips in it. It's simple, you can do it. Slide to the left, slide to the right. Now cool down, have a good time. Slide to the left, slide to the right. Do the butterfly, have a good time. Round, round, round and round you go. It's time to show out right now and take to the floor. Gonna do the two-step, then cowboy boogie. Grab a sweetheart and spin out with 'em. Do the hold down and get into it. Take it to the left now and dip with it. Don't throw down, take a sip with it and lean back, put your hips.
So post lift with a 2-inch lift, we were 21.
21 before we started, and now we're 22 3/4.
That's really close. And it's settled down too because it's been driven a few times.
Yeah, we had
In the
it.
front.
It was first put in. It was two. In the back, we were 3/4 higher, right?
1/2 inch.
Oh, 1/2 inch higher.
Yep.
Now we're 23 1/2 to the top of this.
About 1/2 inch.
So
Yeah.
Cowboy
Now what
boogie. Grab a
was expected?
sweetheart and spin out with 'em. Do the hold down and get into it. Take it to the left now and dip with it. Don't throw down, take a sip with it and lean back, put your hips in it. That was not so bad. That was not so bad, was it?